Hi, I'm Kim Newlove, host of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. Welcome to part 3 of my 4-part Pharmacist Dad series. Each Friday in June 2022, I'm publishing an interview with a pharmacist dad in honor of Father's Day, which is Sunday, June 19th. Today is Friday, June 17th, 2022. We're going into Father's Day weekend here. Summer school has started for my older son, Craig. My younger son, Derek, is in the thick of his summer, dating his girlfriend, umpiring baseball games, running with his cross country team, lifting weights at the gym, and so on. And my husband and I are enjoying the longer days that summer brings to Ohio. It doesn't get dark here until about 10 p.m. It's kind of nice. I hope you are well and enjoying the beginning of your summer too. If you're new to the Pharmacist Voice podcast, welcome. Again, my name is Kim Newlove, and I'm the host. I'm a pharmacist by training, but I made a career transition to voice actor and podcast host. Among other things, I narrate audiobooks for women pharmacist authors, provide medical narration to clients in the pharmaceutical and biotech industries, and narrate content for explainer videos and e-learning projects. My solo podcast episodes are about some aspect of being a pharmacist, a voice actor, a pharmacist podcaster, or my career transition from pharmacist to voice actor and podcast host. My interview shows feature a variety of people who use their voices to advocate for something, educate in some way, or entertain so that you are inspired to use your voice too. This is episode 157, and you can find the show notes on my website, thepharmacistvoice.com. Just click on the podcast tab and search for episode 157. Today's episode is an interview with Mike Koelzer. During the first half of our conversation, we discuss how Mike uses his voice as a pharmacist. Then, during the second half, we focus on Mike's role as a father. If you haven't heard of Mike Koelzer, you are in for a treat. For one thing, Mike Koelzer is the host of the Business of Pharmacy podcast. It's an interesting and entertaining weekly podcast discussion on the business of pharmacy. To learn more about the podcast, visit bizofpharmpod.com. That's bizofpharmpod.com. bizofpharmpod.com. In addition to hosting the podcast, Mike Koelzer owns an independent pharmacy in Grand Rapids, Michigan. When he's not working, Mike enjoys improving his sight reading at the piano. I'm going to mention that there is an Easter egg in this episode, and I'm going to talk about it during the wrap-up at the end. Now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Mike Koelzer. Hi, Mike. Welcome to the Pharmacist Voice podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well, Kim. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Finally, we get to be on my podcast.
Yes,
I've been on yours.
exactly.
So, yep.
Thank you.
It's payback time. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I enjoy your podcast. I actually had a podcast episode where I mentioned I think 7 podcasts that pharmacists do that I listen to most often. You were among them. I really enjoy your podcast.
I heard that. Thank you. I kept rewinding it and playing it again. I just pretended like all 7 were mine.
Oh, come on. Yeah, you just replay your
I just did
part
it 7 times. I figured they were all mine.
Awesome. All right. Well, you're definitely on the list.
Well, thank you, Kim.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about 2 ways that you use your voice. One is as a pharmacist, all the many ways that you use your voice as a pharmacist. And then you are a dad. Very much so. I understand you have more than one child. So later on in the podcast, we'll talk about that too.
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome. Well, first, let's talk about how you use your voice as a pharmacist. How would anybody know you as a pharmacist?
Well, I own an independent pharmacy in Grand Rapids, and I think I'm known around my parts a little bit as a pharmacist there, as the owner there. I've always enjoyed the media and using media to promote anything, I guess, business, business. And so for years, I've been enthralled by working with the local media more so in newspaper, TV, that kind of stuff. My voice in the last couple years has come out more with my podcast. So I'm the host of the Business of Pharmacy podcast, and I've got a lot of different reasons for that. And one of them is just as kind of a challenge to myself to see how far and wide my voice can go. And that is a combination, I think, of the technology, how far can it go, and trying to see if I can get an audience to listen to that technology, let's say.
Yes, absolutely. And what do you talk about on that podcast?
Kim, we talk about anything except medicine. How's that?
I've heard a few where you don't talk at all about medicine, definitely.
We don't talk about medicine at all because there's enough of that out there. And my thought is, I want to talk about things that I would typically. So, all right. So, here's my mission statement. My mission statement is interesting and entertaining because that's the kind of conversation I want to be in. So, if I'm in a car driving with someone, I think, who would I want to be in the car with? And what would I want to be talking about? And thus, there's the genesis of those conversations. So typically, it's not talking to another pharmacist and saying, "Hey, what are you doing over at your shop?" I mean, because it's interesting to me, but not truly. I mean, it's interesting to me, but it's it it's interesting maybe to the listeners, it's maybe interesting to me, but it's not something I'd wanna talk for a couple hours about to somebody. It's like, I wanna talk about something else. So, usually it's the fringe stuff of pharmacy, things that are somewhat related to my business, but that could be anything from marketing to finance to, psychology to, public speaking, all the kind of things that I'm interested in, I suppose, as a pharmacy owner, but not going down the drug route and rarely going down just talking to another independent pharmacist because I know that too well already.
When you had me on your podcast, we talked about the business of what I do a little bit. And
Yes.
with the name of the podcast being the Business of Pharmacy podcast, I think you talk about, I think you stay true to the mission of the title, really. Like you're talking about business stuff.
I guess I could have made it broader, of course. I could have been just more pharmacy stuff. I could have made it more narrow and went down the road of saying like the independent pharmacy podcast, but it's not really that. It's kind of broad pharmacy stuff, just staying away from the medicine. I would look stupid if I talked about medicine on the air. That's why I can't do it. It's not so much that I don't like it. I would just sound stupid. So I got to stay in my area of expertise, which is non-pharmacy stuff.
You got to stay in your zone of
It's
genius,
my
right?
zone of genius, exactly.
Yes, and the conversations that you have with people, you ask questions that I am curious to hear the answer to too. So what I'm going to do is compliment you very sincerely on the types of questions you come up with. You do a great job. And the way that you ask it too is kind of like the way I would ask it like, I'm sorry, I got to stop the conversation. I don't know what that is. What is that? I
Yeah.
love that about you. That's great.
I I truly am asking questions as if I was the person talking to the my guest and we were alone. And so I wouldn't be I'm not asking questions on behalf of the audience typically. I mean, maybe just to get people caught up to speed with maybe an abbreviation or something like that. But if I already know about something, we're not going down that road. So my questions are truly inquisitive of like, why is this? And then of course I'm always thinking, who was it? Howard Stern. His I didn't read his book, but he had a book out a number of years ago, and he said his claim to fame was asking questions so that people would stick around to find out what the next question would be. They had a little bit of an edge to them, a little bit of an interest, maybe a little bit of an edge to them, and that was his goal. Because, like I say, if I don't want to sit and talk to somebody just about mundane day to day stuff in in the direction of pharmacy, the listeners won't want to either.
Which is why you dig a little bit deeper.
We dig, we
Oh,
dig, and
that's
here's the
good.
beauty,
You get a
Kim.
little personal. That's good.
Here's the beauty. So in my show, we record for about 80, 90 minutes, but usually about 60 of that appears on the show. So the guests are full aware that they can go pretty much anywhere with me, and they're always able to say, let's not use that, or let's cut that, or I don't want to go down that direction. They typically don't. But more of the stuff I throw out is, let's say that probably 20% of my talking goes out of there. Those are questions I asked that they weren't real fruitful as far as an interesting answer, or I botched the delivery, not the delivery as just words, but more the essence of the question and those kind of things. So a lot of that stuff gets cut out. And then it leaves the cream rises to the top then.
Oh, that's good. That's a good point, too, for any other podcasters listening to this. I need to do a better job with that. And I'm not saying that I do a poor job asking questions or my guests do a poor job answering them. I think people are tuning in to hear the question and the answer. I don't think they necessarily need the backstory. I think they just want us. I just think people tune in to get to the point. Would you agree with that?
I agree. And Kim, I hate to give away my secrets here, but one of my goals on the show was that within the first 15 seconds the guest is on the show, and within a minute the introductions are done, and I'm into a fairly heavy question, usually non-chronological. So in other words, 15 seconds the guest has already said hello. Within a minute they've already introduced themselves. We're off and running with a question that's non-chronological, something that I'm digging at already. So within a minute we've put the guest on the spot. Now, the opposite of that is one word I never use, and I cringe when people use it, but I don't want to give away my secrets here, Kim. Is anybody gonna be listening to this?
You, me, and your dog, right?
You've listened. No,
Yes.
with your big audience, I don't wanna give away my secrets, but how excited can people be on a show? I'm excited to have you on, Bob. Oh, Sally, I'm excited to be here. And they go back and forth with the excitement, for a minute or two. And then you go into the history of somebody, and histories are interesting. But the whole game of this, Kim, is if you were in a car with somebody driving, that's a conversation, in my opinion, people want to hear. And car rides aren't chronological. You get to the meat right away. You might go back in the past and grab something right away. And something else you don't do is you don't sit there in the car. Kim, if I picked you up and we were going to go to a right out to the beach or something like that, and if you got in, I wouldn't say, Kim, it's great to have you here. I'm excited that you're here. And you'd say, Mike, I'm excited to have you here. And I would say, oh, that's great. I'm really excited. You wouldn't sit there and do that. So why do it when you've got hundreds of people listening?
I agree with that. I usually just have one exchange at the beginning and then we go right into it. Anything beyond
Fast.
that, sometimes I will, if somebody's nervous, I'll go back and forth a little bit, but then I'll just cut that
Cut
out.
it out. Then you cut it
Yep.
out.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I need the guests to feel ready to answer those questions. I need them
You got to warm them up.
yeah, if I'm gonna go punch them in the face with a
That's
question
right.
right away,
Exactly. Yeah.
I want them to have their gloves up, and I want them to have their headgear on
Yes, and
first.
the stuff that I'm talking about, a lot of that might happen, but if 3 minutes of that happens, the listeners don't hear that. They're gonna hear that
Right.
first question after they've been warmed up a little bit. And it might be my 3rd question, but it may not have been very fruitful. So the first thing the listeners are gonna hear is gonna be the first question that I thought had some meat to it.
Mike Koelzer teaches podcasting. Here we go. This is good stuff.
Something I can teach. It sure as hell isn't gonna be medicine.
I teach drug name
You
pronunciations.
do. You
I
do a
don't know.
darn good job of it.
Thank you. I don't know who all listens, but I'll tell you, I've had more countries tune into those than I do my other episodes.
That's really interesting. Yeah,
Yes,
for
yes.
sure.
Oh, I've got people from countries I really had never heard of or hadn't heard of outside of looking through a book. And
Right.
so, yeah, thanks for listening.
I
It's
caught you there. I
it's
thought you
cool.
were gonna say you had countries that you didn't even know how to pronounce, but then that would be a
Oh,
circular reasoning thing.
there's all kinds of stuff I don't know how to pronounce, but as a narrator, I have to do research all the time, and I am
Yes,
embarrassed, truly embarrassed when I mispronounce words, but it happens. I'm a
it
human.
happens. It happens.
But the whole pronouncing drug names correctly is so I'm teaching people how to do it, where to look so that they don't feel so frustrated learning them. It doesn't have to be confusing and frustrating and hard. I teach
No.
people where to look and how to break it down.
Yeah, that's a great service, Kim. Way to go.
Thanks. Thanks. I'm looking forward to doing more of those, just, one a month. And then I've
Yeah.
had pharmacists actually reach out to me and ask to be on the show. So I'm going to have my first guest on May 2nd coming up here. Jennifer Marquez is going to be on the show. We've already recorded, like a 5-minute little bit where she mentions one of the oncology drugs, the generics that
Oh.
she struggles with or that she hears other people struggling with.
Oh, yeah.
By bringing it to light, it makes it seem less scary. Mike, any other ways that you use your voice?
I used to read a lot, Kim. I had a lot of business books I'd read at bedtime when I'd go to bed. And I'm in my mid-50s now. I probably stopped that when I was about 40, reading so much. I think when I hit 40, I decided that I soaked in 40 years of stuff from this world, and the last 40 years I was gonna spend putting back out into the world. So I kind of made a promise to myself that I was going to, for better or for worse, and audience or no audience, but I was going to spend more time creating content than absorbing content. And so I've done that through I've written um 3 books, and I'm on and off putting them on Amazon or not. Now I've pulled them off Amazon. They're very personal to me, and they're the thing about books is with a podcast, you're expected to say something. Maybe I said something 3 years ago, and someone might say, well, Mike said that off the cuff. He might not believe that now. He was just kind of in conversation. With the books, though, I found that I put the stuff in the books and it was kind of conversational. It was not the style, but the the content. It was who I was at the time. I've moved on from a lot of those thoughts, yet people think naturally it's in book form, and so it has more staying power or it meant more. And it's like it kind of did, but I've moved on from stuff. So I go on and off putting these on and pulling them off.
What are those books about?
The one book, my first one was we stopped selling contraceptives at our store about 20 years ago. And it was that journey of uh, why and how I did that. That was one of them. The another one was I had for a while there I had kind of made a goal to get a blog posts, I suppose, and it was when LinkedIn kind of came out with their um, blogging newsletter stuff. So I had a goal of getting 100 blog posts out. And so I want to say blog, and my wife says it's not a blog. You're from Michigan. It's a blog. So I got to like do that long blog. So I did like 50 blog posts, and I realized that like half of them were business and half of them were kind of fatherly stuff. So I broke those down into 2 books. So one is like they're like page blog, short, kind of short. 50 of those personal, 50 business. So so I've done that. I've gotten my voice out that way, I suppose, through um, this podcast. Years ago, I wrote and recorded uh, songs. So I had like 10 songs that I put together, and no one's gonna hear it, you
I
know.
didn't know that. Oh my gosh.
I play piano, and these were synthesized. It's called a DAW, like a digital audio. Digital audio stuff was singing. So it's songs I wrote, and so one of my kids, we were driving one day, and I said, "Grace, what do you want to listen to on the radio?" And she said, "Uh, Dad." Basically, she's saying you're an old guy. She didn't come out and say that, but she says you're an old guy. I'm a young gal. I don't listen to the stuff you listen to. And not only, Dad, do I not listen to the stuff you listen to, but I don't even listen to the stuff that other teenagers listen to. Because, all right, so she's trying to separate herself, right? To be individual, how individual she is with her music. So I said to her, Grace, if you really want to listen to something that no one else listens to, you should listen to my tape. So that's how obscure it is. I'm so obscure that I'm cool for teenagers.
Did she end up liking it?
She's heard it before. She likes it. My kids are my biggest
Aw.
fans in that, but it's been a while. It's most of this stuff the stuff that I've done, the books and the music and so on, most of it is not going to mean much until I die. It's one of those things like it comes out, comes out at your maybe not the funeral, but you know, oh, this is what he meant in life and so on. So that's what most of that stuff is for. It's kind of like a after I die kind of thing.
It's your art, man. It appreciates in value upon your
It
death.
appreciate it appreciates some value. It's a fine wine. Yeah, so I don't know, but at least that's the dream I'll carry to the grave, whatever they do with it is that's their business.
No, that's a very sensitive side of you, and thank you for sharing that. I think you might have at least one person who's a diehard Mike Koelzer fan that's gonna go try to dig that
They'll
up.
try to dig it up. Yeah, they'll
Yeah,
try to
if they
dig it up.
tried to, would they be able to find it, or is it just it lives in your own computer?
If someone wanted to find me online, they could. They'd have to dig pretty deep for that one, um, but they could. Voice is really funny. Voice is so funny because it's very subjective, and that's why you get these crazies on American Idol because they come on and no one I mean, you know, I'm not gonna make it onto a court as a basketball player. Someone's gonna say, "Look, you're not this guy. You can't even be close to that height-wise," and so on. And the same with running and that kind of stuff. It's very objective. But with singing, it's so subjective to people. I've subjected myself to saying, I don't really want to put it out there for the world. But there's some people that subjectively say, I'm going to be on American Idol because, and some voices do end up being pretty well that are subjective. We know a lot of singers that just have odd voices, but they seem to have made it somehow.
Yeah, like Tiny Tim.
Yeah, Tiny Tim, Sonny Bono, he didn't those guys didn't have good voices, but they had something, and that's the dream that keeps American Idol alive.
Hmm. Yeah, cool. Anything else? Any other, skeletons in your vocal
Oh,
closet there?
jeez. So let's see the store.
YouTube
Um,
channel, TikTok videos,
yeah, I
anything?
tried YouTube. I put some shows on YouTube probably, jeez, that's probably 15 years ago. Not shows, I mean, just little blog things. Those didn't go too well. I was those didn't go over too well. Um, that was that. Right now I'm breaking up my show more into minute segments, and so I'm putting quite a few of those um, onto the internet. And one of the areas, two of the areas that are a good spot for those is YouTube Shorts. Those are under a minute, and also TikTok. And so I knew I had to be on TikTok, but I just didn't have the looks or the gender or a few different things that I want to do well on TikTok for.
You
And
have
so
to
but
dance too,
and you
Mike.
got to dance too. And so these have been real good to get on. So I'm finally cracked the nut of TikTok and YouTube Shorts, and I'm real excited about that with these little clips I'm doing.
Awesome. You'll have to give me all of your links so I can put those in the show notes and people can check you out.
Sure, sure. Not the music one though.
Now, well, you could stick that in there for, like a little golden nugget or
The
I don't
golden
know.
nugget.
That's not the right word for a oh man,
Easter egg.
Easter egg. Yes, that's what
Yes,
I meant.
Easter egg. Yeah,
Jeez.
Easter's my music part of Easter dies on the cross. There's no resurrection for that. So
Oh, it's a one-time thing.
it's
It's
a
all
one-time thing
all
between
done.
me and Grace. Grace can enjoy it, but no one else really. But if they really dig, they can find it.
Okay, yeah, I'm not gonna dig for it,
No,
but,
no.
it's a fun thought just, like,
That's a
thinking
fun
about
thought.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
you exploring that part of your voice. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. Long time ago.
Well, Mike, I really enjoyed hearing about how you use your voice as a pharmacist. Let's kind of switch gears here and talk about you as a dad. Can you tell me a little bit about your family?
Yeah, so I'm married to my beautiful wife and we have 10 children. 5 girls and
Con-
5 boys.
Congratulations. That's
Yeah.
amazing. People don't have big families as much anymore. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, not so much anymore. We both come from big families, and it's just something that we talked about and always thought it'd be cool to do. And so yeah, we just while the timing was right, we had the kids. Now our youngest is 11, so we're probably I'm imagine we wrap things up on that, but
There's always such a thing as, an oops baby, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, congratulations on 10 children. I'm assuming everybody is healthy and thriving.
Yeah, they're all healthy, we range from 29 down to 11, and so the one married, all the rest are single still, and I've got, 7 living at home still.
Wow, any grandkids yet?
No grandkids. I'm not sure if our kids are gonna have grandkids. I mean, I'm not sure if our kids are gonna have kids. It just doesn't they're just it's slow in that department. I tell my wife that we might have to skip over grandkids and go right to the great grandkids at this rate.
Why? How are you gonna do
I
that?
was
Come
joking.
on.
No, yeah,
That's
who knows
funny.
those? Yes, we've got but I think the whole generation is slower now. I think what people used to do when they were like 23 or 4 is now like 28 or 9, it seems. Within one generation, it seemed to have slowed down 5 or 6 years.
I would totally agree with that. I got married at 22, first kiddo I got pregnant at 23, I guess. Gave birth at 24, so that 22 to 24 years old
Yeah,
was my reproductive years,
yeah,
and then had my second and final child by the time I get pregnant at 25 again, and then had him second kid at 26. So I was done
yeah.
by the time I was 26. And one of my questions for you today is, how do you know when it's time to start having kids these days?
You mean how do you know as a couple when to have kids?
Yeah. So, all right, as a pharmacist, so you're a
Yeah,
pharmacist dad, and that's kind of the theme of the talk today.
yeah.
You get to give advice to other current or prospective pharmacist dads. There are some guys listening to this that are thinking, I don't know when to become a dad,
Hmm.
and this guy's got 10 kids. What advice does he have for me?
Well, I would say that you've got some bookends um, that are somewhat natural. Kids do best in a two-parent home. So first, I would probably recommend that there's a commitment of two people to see this out until at least the kids are adults. That would be the first bookend on the left side. And then I think that in our life, there's a natural bookend on the other end, just being the age of the mom, I suppose. So in our case, you divide up those years and it came out to 10 babies. In our case, we didn't want to regret having children later on. We didn't want to regret them. I mean, you have extra, we got 10 now, we can always put some up for adult adoption. But
Mike.
but you can't look back and say, I wish we would have done this. I mean, that ship has sailed already. So my wife and I, we just did, we had all these kids and life is kind of crazy with it. But I said, Margaret, I said, in, you know, 5 years after the last one leaves, we can sell everything. We can move into a nice clean condo and sit there and stare at each other all day. I mean, it's like, it's like there's only a certain time period that you can have the babies. And so we didn't want to lose that chance.
How'd you decide on 10? You mentioned earlier that one of the bookends was the age of the mom.
Yeah.
So, was that what was kind of the deciding factor for you
Well,
completing your family?
well, for us, so we got married when I was almost 25. My wife was 24. And so we started having children. We started having children right away. We could have waited, but I find out that I don't think I'm a real good planner anyways. I plan stuff, I usually screw it up anyway. So it's like what am I waiting for? What do I know better? What am I gonna know better in a few years and I'm gonna know better now? So we just opened it up and so at 25 and then our last child is 11. So our last one was like at 40, 44, 45. So when I say the age of the mom on the one side, that had more to do with the having a stable in general, a stable home system with two parents. And then on the far end, it was just biological that we couldn't have anymore. And that came out to 10. And it wasn't like a goal. It was just like 10, that's how it came out. With quite often with, and I think all women are probably different, but with nursing, there's a certain time period where you're typically not able to get pregnant again. And so happened to work out that all the kids were about 20 months to 20 some months apart. And that comes out to 10. You do the math, Kim. I don't know the math. It just came out to 10.
No, it sounds like just about every other year, and I was just
Yeah.
curious how that worked for you. Did you feel like it was too much, or did it feel about
They
right?
drive they drive you crazy. It drove me crazy. But I know a lot of people go crazy with 0 kids or 2 kids. Life is crazy, marriage is crazy,
Yes.
work is crazy. And so at least with I always figure at least with the kids, that's something that it's just like it's just you can if there's an afterlife, that is one thing that survives this world is the souls that you help create through through having children. If there's an afterlife, there's nothing else you bring to the afterlife with you except potential souls that you made. If there's not, then there's not. But if there is, that's the only thing that probably carries on. So it was just too big of a gift for us to say. It's like we can make those, and it was just too big of a gift to say, nah, that we don't want anymore. That was that.
Well, that's interesting. That's kind of deep, Mike. Thanks for sharing that.
It's only as deep as saying, like, when you eat food, you gain weight or potentially gain weight. It's just like the natural next step. I mean, it's being deeper would, maybe be doing something that was against that, like saying, okay, I'm going to be bulimic, or I'm going to do something, or I'm going to have weight loss surgery. I'm talking the parallel, so doing something like that, like bulimia, weight loss surgery, whatever. That is kind of the deep thing. It's like you're saying, okay, I I know more about the natural rhythm of things that I'm going to block that. I'm going to block, I'm going to be bulimic, or I'm going to have weight loss surgery. I'm not saying that's bad at all. The point I'm making is those kind of decisions are the ones that are deeper, because it's like you trust yourself enough to make decisions, and you're going to live with those decisions forever. So with the babies, the deep part of it would be to say, I know enough about my life that I'm going to plan out this when I'm going to have children, and I'm going to, maybe use surgical means too, or not have children, and I'm going to do this or that. That's kind of the deep part, to think that you have enough knowledge, and more power to you if you do. We didn't have that kind of knowledge. So our deepness was like non-deepness. We're just like, "Ah, what happens, happens." We were undeep.
And you shallow? Shallow?
We're shallow.
No.
We're shallow people. Very shallow.
I think the way I look at things, because I'm one of those open-minded
Yeah.
people or growth-minded, whatever. Clearly, you're a growth-minded person when it comes to having children. But I think there's just so many different ways to start a family, and not only start a family but complete a family. And I think somebody listening to this today needs to know how you think, and all the other dads that come
Yeah.
onto the show, because
Yeah.
it can be one of those hard questions in life, like how many kids do I have? How far apart? When do I start? It can be hard. And so many people want to do it perfect, and they hesitate and they don't get started because they think they have to plan everything. Like you were saying, that's almost a little bit more thinking than you need to do.
No matter how open you are, no matter how open or not open we were to life, or how much we thought about it or didn't think about it, we were limited to 10 children. It's not like my wife had 33 children, you know? I mean, there's only if if you're open, if you say, I don't know we don't know what the hell we're doing. I mean, I don't even know, there's so much stuff I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know the best cycle for my kids. With that attitude, we had 10 kids. We didn't have 33 of them. See what I'm saying?
Yes.
So you can be like, you can kind of go crazy with it because it's not going to get that crazy. It's like there's a limit. There's a limit to how many children you can have, assuming you're monogamous. Now, if you're not
Oh, yeah,
monogamous,
yeah.
then then sky's the limit, Genghis Khan, I mean, you can have, it's like a third of the world came from him, so you can so them so there's certain limits that only allow you so many children. And I don't pretend to know enough about me or this world to plan that. I just don't. So that's that.
That's that. Do you know how I knew how many children I was gonna have?
How's that?
We had our hands full with our son that has autism when our other son was born.
Ah,
And once we got that diagnosis, I felt really sure that I had my hands completely full and I honestly could not handle more. And it wasn't fair to the whole entire family to keep going. And this is something that is going to be a very unpopular opinion, but I think there's at least one woman out there that needs to hear this because this is just how I thought and what I did. Just because you have the equipment doesn't mean you need to have more kids.
sure.
And there's many a person out there that thinks just because their equipment's working, they should keep having kids. And I'm just sharing my thought because somebody out there needs to hear it.
And Kim, you're the deep one, right? So you had to make that tough decision. You had to see how it was going to affect yourself and your children and their siblings, or how many siblings, and how it was going to affect the world and how it was going to affect a ton of things. That is deep. I wasn't that wise. I didn't have that kind of knowledge. I'm not that wise, and we didn't have the reason to go that deep, so we just didn't. But that's deep thinking. That your stuff takes a lot of thought. Ours didn't take much thought.
Well, thank you. I'll take that credit. And I'm happy with my decision. I
Sure.
never have looked back. Although I did tell my husband I will have up to 6 children, and I never did have six, but my friend Rachel did, and it's kind of cool to see one of my very best friends, raising her 6 kids
Yeah.
and seeing what her life is like, and it is definitely different from mine. And she gets to see what it would have been like if she would have only had 2 kids. So it's all good, Mike. It's all good.
It is funny with a lot of kids because I always pictured our kids as being younger, and they say that little kids have little problems and big kids have big problems because, I didn't think way past the young parenting stage, of having a young family. And now as they start to turn into adults, in this time of life of launching and things like that, and it's probably not physically any more challenging, but you've kind of bonded to all the kids mentally and you want the best for them. And I think it's been harder as time has gone on, this time of them all turning into adults right now. And I that probably, I guess that doesn't stop. And like I say, not not they're using my resources. I suppose they're just using the resources of my heart and my head, just thinking about stuff. And I suppose that doesn't stop till you die.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Once you have your kids, you always worry about them and
Yep.
hope for them and pray for them, and
Yep.
yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yep.
Well, you talked about a challenge just now of having children and, thinking about them, mental
Yep.
capacity and all that. What are some other challenges that you've faced as a dad?
Probably the biggest challenge that I face is the decision of how much to sacrifice for the future. And what I mean by that is you're with your children and you're on vacation, but your mind is thinking about some issue at work, let's say, something that's going to come up, and maybe a confrontation you're going to have, or some negotiation thing you're going to have to do. And it's easy to say, well, you shouldn't be doing that, Dad. You're with your family and so on. But I think we have to be somewhat gentle on ourselves to say, when you're thinking about stuff, you're kind of sacrificing the present for the future. You're maybe thinking about things at work, but you're doing that in order to provide in the future for your family, because as they're playing at your feet right now at the beach, they seem to be pretty well taken care of. So your mind's always thinking of the next step and so on. That's probably been the hardest thing for me, is to focus on the family. And then when you're not focused on the family, not being too hard on yourself to say, why are you not relaxing with your family? Well, as the as the parents, and in my case, the parent outside the home, you're kind of in a battle. So you're thinking about that next battle. And so I think there's a lot of that's a challenge, I think, to I guess go through the day and through the year and be easy on yourself when you don't think that you've totally committed to something. It's like you can't always. You're you're happy for the present, but you're fighting for the future. And it's just not an easy role as a parent, as you well know.
Yes, sure. I like your point about you sacrifice the present if your mind is in the future. You're worried about the future. I hear you on that. I don't think I've ever thought about it, like stop to think about what sacrifice I'm making by worrying about the future in the present. That's again, that's pretty deep, Mike. I like that though. I like to think.
Human nature, we are devised to not sit there and pat ourselves on the back. We're devised to have 99 things going well, and you focus on the one that's not going well, because the 99 other things are not going to extend your life, but the one thing you're looking at can kill you. It can kill you right now, kill whatever, your life or your emotion or something. And so it's human nature that we're focused on the negative. And I think we just have to be easy on ourselves to realize that we march forward as a parent, and but it's not a perfect setting marching forward, but it's good enough just to march forward.
March forward. Yes. Well, let's talk about some of your favorite things now. I'm sorry I got on the negatives
No.
on the challenges, but hey, that's important for dads to hear about these
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that up. What are some of your favorite things about being a dad?
I can't think of any.
Oh, come on, Mike.
My favorite things I think about being a dad are, I would suppose it's, you're saying you're saying well, and let me just touch on my decision with the more children, is that life can be hard sometimes with different things, either financial or personally. It can be depression or anxiety or different things, anything that people go through. And it's it's satisfying to me to look at children. And let's say you have 0 children, but you're open to that idea. And let's say you have 1 child for whatever the reason, but you were open to that idea. And you'll say you have 10 children, you're open to that idea. Being open to that idea, there's a certain sense of satisfaction where you say, I won and life didn't win. And when I say life, I'm talking the negative part of life. Let's say the evilness of this world and the um, the things that can happen in this world, the tragic things that can befall your family, disease and financial hardships and all that kind of stuff. But in the face of that, you say that for whatever the reason, it's kind of cool that that we still brought forth life into this world. And it's kind of like a nod to saying, we got this still. That there's tragedy in this world, but we've got this. The opposite of that would be parents that, and this is their decision to say, we're not going to ever bring people into this world. You go the full opposite of that. You look at people like things like at Columbine or something, right? Where these kids went in and they said, not only do we not want to live in this world, but we're the judge and jury to take out other people because this world is so terrible. So it's kind of like parenthood, marriage and parenthood is kind of like the opposite of Columbine. It's like saying, even though I look out to the same world that the Columbine shooters looked out into, their answer to it was wipe things out. My answer to it is saying, we'll take another. So I think that's cool. I think that's the favorite thing about parenthood, is saying, is you kind of said yes to whatever the hell we're doing here. Whether there's a God or not a God, whatever it is, you've said yes to it instead of saying no to it. I think that's kind of cool.
That is. That is. It's kind of a cool way to look at it too. It's almost like throwing your hat in the ring of optimism. Like I'm optimistic.
I think that's it, Kim. I think it's kinda like giving a glass half full to this world versus, half empty. I think that's it, and it's just a flip of a coin kinda, but it's just 51-49. So I think that's cool. That's probably the cool part, and I think as far as what I enjoy about parenthood, I think that, as I get older in my kids' eyes, I'm probably gonna become more feeble, but probably also more wise. I'm thinking they might even crack that book open before I die.
Oh. They'll get some of your wisdom.
If I get old enough, they'll crack it open before I die even.
Ooh. Hey, that's kind of cool though. You get to pass your wisdom on via a book to your children when they're ready to hear it, if you think about it. Because that book could sit there for ages, or I don't know if it's Kindle only or paperback or what is
Yeah.
it? Is
It's
it
Kindle. It's Kindle.
Kindle? I mean, you could always have a couple copies printed out, just the print version, and then
Or they can go on and buy their own damn copy.
yeah, well, who knows if Kindle will be around
That's
when they're
true.
ready to hear your words. I'm just saying.
I better put it in my vault.
There you go. Mike, I'm going to ask you a few more questions. These are kind of rapid fire questions.
Yeah,
Some are funny, and please feel free to be funny, and some are just, like serious ones.
sure.
So let's start off with a kind of funny one. Raising kids is expensive. I think you know that after raising 10 kids. Can you name one thing it surprised you that you had to buy this one thing throughout your whole entire fatherhood?
Oh, not surprised, but braces are a pain in the ass. Every kid's like 10 kids, 80% of them have braces on, it's like 40, $50,000 for dental stuff, and that's just like braces are kind of like putting a roof on the house or getting a new water heater, doesn't it brings it back to maybe normal. It doesn't really improve anything, So I think probably teeth and dental is kind of like a pain in the ass.
All right, I would agree with that. That's cool. I can't wait to hear everybody
Yeah.
else's answers
Yeah.
to this. I'm gonna have
Right.
at least four pharmacist dads.
Awesome.
So moving on, did your wife have any interesting cravings while she was pregnant? And did you have any cravings too?
I can't think of any food stuff that was was cravings. I think that there's, during the times that it's crazy, I think sweets always will boost up serotonin, so I'm never going to kick out, butter pecan out of the house or something like that, but I can't think of really any cravings per se, except just a boost of too much sugar probably.
All right, that's fair enough. Now, this is a more serious question. It has to do with books. I know
Yeah.
that you said that your first 40 or so years of life, you read quite a bit. And I was wondering if there were any books that you would recommend to other dads, current dads or prospective dads, on the topic of kids, raising kids, pregnancy, being a dad, etc.
My all-time favorite book is called Getting Things Done by David Allen, and it's not so much getting things done, but it's making sure that everything is recorded so that you know that you're not missing out on things, which then allows your mind freedom to do some things that are maybe beyond average. So whether it's certain things with your kids or with your business or hobbies and things like that. So basically that book, it every single task that has ever been in my head goes into my do list, and it just lets you not necessarily focus on what to do, but that it's recorded there, so then your mind can, screw off figuratively, knowing that the important stuff's captured. So that's that's far and away my favorite book that I could recommend to anybody.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm sure that would help somebody. I'll have to check that out too. I'm just
Yeah,
kind of curious what the table of contents has
sure.
to say.
Yes.
All the important things that need to be checked off.
Yeah.
That's cool. All right. Now, do you have a favorite dad's night out type thing or a guy's night out type thing that you like to do? Do you get together with the guys?
I don't hang out with the guys. We have a close couple friend that we go out with as couples. Um, I've never I've never really had that I can think of a joy to go out with. It's never really been much for me to go out with buddies. My dad used to golf, every Thursday night, forever, and I don't have that. Um, I've got other things that I may wanna do, but I've never really done much with the guys.
Okay. Hey, that's fair enough. My husband is really big into fantasy football, and Labor Day weekend is like his weekend. I think he's usually got between 4 and 6 fantasy football drafts that
Yeah,
weekend, and he loves to go out to wherever the guys are, somebody's basement or
yes.
whatever, so yeah.
I'm not proud of saying that. In fact, I wish that I could maybe come down from some either anxious thoughts or whatever and do that and really enjoy it. I just haven't, and I something I maybe could have worked on or should have worked on, but I just never did.
I'm curious, can you explain why? I'm just kinda curious as a parent, and also as a wife of a football fanatic. I, actually call myself a football widow, and I'm just curious how other guys think about that, like me time and getting together with other guys and whatever.
I have a lot of me time and I like personal time and I like to play piano, so I'll spend a lot of time on the piano. So I like a lot of my own time. I just never enjoyed a guy night. I just never enjoyed like going out with the guys. I don't know. Maybe it's because I don't know the reason. I mean, like I say, it's not something I'm proud of or not proud of. I think it would be good for me to maybe be a person who might like to do that. It's just, it's just I haven't. It's just sort of um, I don't, sports are okay. So let's say it's either sports or fishing or or what other stuff guys do, and it's just like, ah, it's all right. It's all right. It's just all right. It's nothing I really care to do. Like when I get together with brother-in-laws to like play poker like once a year, kind of thing around the holidays. It's like, that's okay. I'd rather just sit at home. I'm kind of a sitter. I just like to sit either at home or on the piano bench or just hanging out. I don't know. I like I say, I'm not proud of it. I probably should have done more guy stuff. I just didn't do it.
Hey, no judgment, no judgment. You actually answered one of the other questions that I was gonna ask, though. I was going to ask, what do you do when you have time for yourself? And you talked about the piano. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
That's about it. I've had a lifelong, well, a 30-year goal of to be a as good of a sight reader on the piano as I can until I die. And so sight reading would be playing something that you haven't memorized. Think about like reading. It's not like someone's putting a poem in front of you that you've seen over and over. You're just getting a new book or a new magazine article. You've never seen it before. So that's my goal with piano is to become a better and better sight reader so I can see stuff I've never seen before and play it. And it's just been a great hobby for me. I enjoy it, and, that's what I do with any free time I have.
Oh, that sounds great. I wish I was a better sight reader too. Did it take you a long time to become good at it?
It's been 30 years, and it's kinda like, I suppose, like golf for some people where it's something that you can't perfect, and this is something I'll never perfect, of course, so it's a nice hobby just to keep getting better. I think here's what I like about it, Kim, is there's a lot of stuff in life that we do where you have the ability to go backwards. So like as a parent, you can think you're doing well and then one of the kids, you know, confronts you about something that you wish you would have done differently as a dad, or with business you can be moving along and then you'll have a bad year or you'll have some whatever lawsuit, whatever in the hell can happen with different things unless my fingers get chopped off or arthritis or something like that, piano always moves in the forward direction. My reading of the improving my sight reading always moves in the forward direction. So that's pretty cool. There's not many things in life that do that. And so I think that's what I like about it too. Any effort I put into it is fruitful.
Yeah, it sounds like it has a logical progression, which
It does.
I love. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's a pharmacist thing, but I love like you start here and then this
Yeah.
all these like a list, like step
Yep.
1, step 2, step 3, and then eventually you just level up. Are we talking about like Rachmaninoff or are we talking about like classical? Or are we talking about what kind of music?
So some of my favorites, there's a website called Scribd, which is you pay $10 a month and you can read any books you want to or magazines. In there is different piano um,
Oh,
what would you call it?
sheet music.
Sheet music, different sheet music. And so some of my favorites are, I like they call it the American Songbook. It's like 1920s through 40s, a lot of the Frank Sinatra and different thing, Tony Bennett, these kind of things. So I'll do that, and then I'll go off into some classical stuff, but mind you, the classical stuff is not something that I'm going to practice over and over again. I'm going to play a piece of classical music that I maybe will never see again. And so it's not pretty. It's slow, and it's kind of methodical through it. But but my goal is to keep throwing different stuff at me, different time signatures, different music genres to make me as fluent in different styles, so that the odds, if I put something in front of me, I can handle it more and more. There's probably a lot of symbolism there or something. I just haven't figured it out. I just like to play piano.
Oh, that's great. Hey, Mike, do you have any suggestions for how a pharmacist dad can balance work and family?
I touched on this a little bit earlier, that when things are out of balance, and they will be out of balance for sometimes weeks on end, especially if you're a business owner, or you've got quite a bit of, business owner, or just a lot of responsibility at work. And so I don't know if there is such thing as as being in balance. I suppose on a pragmatic way, I'm always in balance because of my do list. And so I never have anything on my head. Everything is going to the do list. So that's a way to balance. You can always see what life is throwing at you, and your goals always in front of you. And that's on the the technical side. The other side, I think we have to be, especially with children, we have to be somewhat easy on ourselves, because when life is out of balance, it's not because necessarily work is more important than your children. It's that the future might be more important than the present. So you might be out of balance at work, and you feel like you're not giving to your family, but you are, but maybe you're giving to your family 3 years from now by what you're doing right then, because you're giving up the present for the future. So, I think if you have true as best to your ability, as best as you can, if you have true intentions that you want to put your family first, that doesn't necessarily mean you're there time-wise with them first, but it means that overall you see the big picture, and you're trying to make the best plan you can with this big picture, taking into account both the present and the future. And that doesn't always look like how much time can I spend with my family right now.
Excellent words of wisdom. Thank you. And if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you just one last question.
Sure.
All right, this is the wild card. It can be
Hmm.
anything. Do you have any advice that we haven't already covered for current or prospective pharmacist dads?
I think first you have to look back and say, all right, did I make any did I make any promises in life so far? And so you have to start there. And so you look back and you say, well, I'm in pharmacy. I didn't really promise anything to pharmacy. And my parents are, they're maybe ill, and I'm trying to do things for them. I think I have that responsibility. And you go down the list, and then you say, oh, my wife's here. I promised to be true to her in sickness and health and everything that life throws at you. Oh, I did make a promise. Okay, I'm going to start there. So I think you first start with any promises you made in life. And a lot of times, if you have children, not all the time, but a lot of times, if you have children, you've made a promise to somebody. It might be the marriage promise, it might be something um, not as explicit uh, in today's standards. And maybe there was no promise at all. But if you did make a promise to somebody, and if it was a lifelong promise, that's your first one you look at. And then if you're pretty good to that promise, then I think everything falls into place from there. So I would say the advice I can give to a pharmacist who's a parent, if they're married, if they took a promise to make that far and above the highest calling you have, because it's the only calling you've done so far. That's the only thing you've promised to do so far. And if you made that promise, make that your first strongest goal every day. And then a lot of good stuff will just, not a lot of good stuff, a lot of stuff will just fall into place after that.
Yes, it will fall into place. That's such great advice, Mike. Thank you for sharing that. Mike, thank you so much for being on the podcast today to share how you use your voice as a pharmacist and as a dad. I think your messages are going to resonate with a lot of current and prospective pharmacist dads out there. And I hope you have just the best summer, and happy Father's Day.
Thanks very much, Kim, for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate everything you do for the profession. Thank you.
My pleasure.
That was a fun interview. Now I'd like to share some final thoughts with you. First of all, Mike's podcast really is one of my favorite pharmacy podcasts. I opened up the interview today by talking about his spot on my list of favorites. He's on there for sure. Now, in case you didn't catch it during the interview, Mike interviewed me on his podcast. It aired in October 2020, and there's a link to it in the show notes if you're interested in listening. I recommend it, of course. And I just want to let you know, not just in my podcast episode with Mike, but in every episode, I feel that Mike asks great questions of all of his guests, and he is a fun guy to talk to and a fun guy to listen to. 100%. Next, I want to give Mike and his wife a lot of credit for raising a big family. There are 12 people in his family. That's amazing. Now, if you didn't catch it during the interview, I want to point out that Mike said that he and his wife both come from big families. I have no idea what that's like. I have no idea what that's like. But I do know that he and his wife, seriously, he and his wife must be very special people with the right mindset to raise a big family like that. Much respect to both of you. And finally, I just want to say that I really enjoyed this conversation with Mike. His insights and advice are unique, and it's also a lot of fun talking to him. I love the insights and advice, but I love that he's fun to talk to, too. I giggled a lot. Now, if you are interested in hearing Mike on the Business of Pharmacy podcast, visit bizofpharmpod.com. There's a link to that in the show notes. And if you liked our conversation, you're going to love his podcast. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you for listening to episode 157 of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. Please visit thepharmacistvoice.com to read the show notes. What's in the show notes today, Kim? You'll find Mike's bio, links to his podcast, the Business of Pharmacy podcast, his YouTube channel, his LinkedIn page, his Kindle books on Amazon.com, and more. Now, if you know someone who would like this podcast episode or needs to hear it, please share it with them. And subscribe to or follow the Pharmacist Voice podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out. Join me next week for part 4 of my Pharmacist Dad series. It's my interview with Iqbal Acha. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there, and thank you again for listening. Hey, thanks for sticking around. Here's the Easter egg. Did you figure it out? I didn't turn my microphone on. I was talking directly into my computer, and it did not sound as good as it normally does. You probably heard sound reflection off the screen of my iMac. It sounds like sound bouncing off of glass. It is unpleasant. It is not the best. It sounds kind of like I'm talking in a bathtub or something. I am a professional. I am embarrassed that I did that, but for some reason, I did not pick my audio interface as my source of my microphone. My audio interface was connected to my microphone. Apparently, I did this in a couple of different podcast episodes in the month of April. I recorded this one in April. I usually record a couple months ahead of time to give myself plenty of time to edit. I, for whatever reason, did not do a good job selecting my microphone. It happens to the best of us. And if you're ever on a podcast episode and you need help connecting a microphone correctly, I totally know how to do that. Contact me through my website, thepharmacistvoice.com. Just click on the Contact tab and either leave me a voicemail or fill out the contact form. I'll be happy to help you set up your microphone. I do know how to do it, but even the pros mess up every once in a while. I'll take done over perfect any day. And Mike's a great sport. He didn't say anything about it. Maybe he didn't even notice, but I sure did. Anyways, now you know the Easter egg from this episode. I hope you enjoyed. Take care. Have a great weekend. Bye.